Welcome to part 2 of John Emery's Cycling Reminiscences. John now tells us about his racing career, firstly in the 7 years up to his first retirement, and then his decade of racing as a veteran, during which he covered 120,000 miles.
I was a good climber. I'm a record holder on climbing Brassknocker Hill, as you know it. It was my record.
Right.
I broke it when I was 29. Julie was expecting our third, and as I came up the hill, Julie was stood on the last bend, and she had Nick by her side, Joanne in her arms, and the lump of what was going to be Patsy. And I remember thinking to myself, what on earth are you doing this for? And I actually broke the record. I took 3 seconds off. I did it in 2 minutes 54 seconds from bottom to top.
Gosh.
So it was good. That was a good ride. Julie, by then I was working hard and enjoying my work. I was in the printing and publishing business, and I was a typesetter. And I have to say, it was the love of my life, typesetting. I absolutely enjoyed it. It came from nowhere. I don't know why I ended up there in the print trade, but I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And during this, actually in this room one day, Julie said to me, she said, "What are you trying to achieve?" No, not in a critical way, a genuine question. You know, looking back, you think, why do you ask that? But yes, that wasn't an unreasonable. What are you trying to achieve? And I think I blandly said, so I'd like to beat the hour for 25 miles. And I got within 2 seconds of it. 1 hour and 1 second. So I was within 2 seconds of it. All right, you know. And I was quite competitive in the area. And I said, I'd like to beat the hour. Oh, and that was the end of the conversation. Well, 6 weeks later, within 6 weeks, I think it was, I was racing in Birmingham. And of course, I happened to do a 59-minute ride. Ah. So I was stood at the side of the road shouting one of my compatriots on, to encouraging him. And this gentleman stood by the side of me, and he said, have you ridden today? I said, yeah. And he said, how have you got on? I said, oh, great. I said, I've done a personal best. I said, I've done a 59-minute time. He said, good for you, he said. Yes. I said, that's my last ride. And I told him that I'd agree with my wife that when I did one. And, of course, everybody said, you can't do that. But it turned out he was from the national press, and I had a bit of a write-up on this guy who had beaten the hour, and actually now decided that was it, because he'd agreed with this. And I finished at 29 and took up sailing. I'd already had a dabble at it, sailing. A neighbour of mine, his lad was he was a national standard sailor, and ended up in Canada sailmaking and running a company, his own company with 200 employees. So he was that good. But he came over one day. He was a teenager, and he said, "Excuse me, Mr. Emery." He said, "Would you like to have a sail with me?" And I'd never been in a sailing boat at all, but the local club is just down the river. So I said, yes. I said, I've never. Oh, that's all right. He said, I've borrowed a boat. He said, it's an open championship. He said, but I've borrowed a boat. He said, because he's a single-handed sailor. So I went down, and sure enough, we got in this boat, and he said, just pull this, do this, and guns went, and whistles or whatever goes off, and we sailed this, and a little bit later, the guns went. I said, what are we doing now? He said, we've just won. So there are people from all over the country. There's probably about 20 boats, but no, people from all over. So we won I literally had done what he told me to do, Paul. Yeah. So the next day we went down, and it was blowing a gale. The day before, it was perfect. Lovely wind, smooth water. It was blowing a gale. So before the start, one gust caught us, and I now really know that it's the normal thing that people do when they're don't know what they're doing, is when the wind blows harder, you pull the rope harder, you don't let go. So whereas he let the mainsail go, I pulled the jib and collapsed the boat into the water. I ended up again in the water. He, being the professional, was up on the gunwale. Yeah. And he might have had his socks wet, about all. So I swam round the boat and helped him to right it again. So I climbed in the boat soaking wet. I don't think he had anything more than wet socks. But we damaged the buoyancy. And I didn't know it, but the rules were, he knew, that we had to withdraw because the boat was unseaworthy,
Right.
as you call it. So we withdrew, so that was it. Every boat capsized in the race. Even the people that won it had to run the boat up onto the bank, bail their boat out before they could finish. So, but honours even, I think. And that was where I got interested in sailing. So when I was 29, I got keen on sailing down at the Chew Valley Lake, which is a lovely big lake. And from that point on, we took up serious sailing. And I became secretary of the Chew Valley Lake Sailing Club for about 2.5 years, until my late 30s, but nearly 40 years of age, when I became ill. My illness was a typical thing of that age, because you don't look after yourselves, high blood pressure. And my GP said, I said, look, what is the prognosis of this? He said, you won't get life insurance. I said, oh, that's interesting. He said, I want you to do some exercise and diet. He said, how heavy are you? I said, I got no idea. So he said, well, what were you when you were 25? I said, 10 stone 4, 10 stone 4, 10 stone 4 pound. Because I knew, because when I was racing,
yes.
10 3, 10 4 was my winning weight. So I stood on his scales and I was about 13.5 stone. I said, your scales? Something wrong with your scales? No, he said, they might not be deadly accurate. He said, but they're not far out. So he said, look, he said, have a diet sheet. He said, do a bit of exercise. So I came home. I didn't have a bike at that time. My son did. So I borrowed his bike and went for a ride round the block. And I was exhausted. So anyway, I started riding to work because I was working in Bristol. I ended up riding every day, whatever the weather. And I lost 3 stone in 6 months, under 6 months. I had no treatment for blood pressure, and in fact, my GP said, if I could have your blood pressure readings, he said, I'd be thrilled to bits. Also, at the same time, of course, people started to see me on the road, people that used to race with me.
Oh, right.
So, of course, one day, my ex-training partner rang up and he said, John, he said, are you going to race again? I said, oh. He said, you'll be a veteran now. He said, you're 40. I said, I better not. So anyway, one thing led to another, so I sat Julie down one day and I said, Julie, I said, something I'd like to say. I said, would you mind if I started racing? And of course, Julie's face, because she knew what that meant, racing.
Right, yes.
It wasn't sort of round the block. But she could see that I'd had great results. My health had returned to that young fella that she'd married all those years ago. And I was, so I rode my first club event, won it. So away we go again. From that point, the rest is history. Yeah. I went faster and faster and faster. I broke all my records. I broke even a couple of place-to-place records, Bath to Salisbury and back. I did it. I'd entered a 100-mile time trial in Essex, but my entry was returned because I was too fast. Oh. I was in my 40s, so we quickly arranged a Bath to Salisbury and back. Not record attempt, it was, but just simply to get my standard ride in on it. Yes. Something to fill the gap, you see. So off we went. Everything was all professionally done. All the timekeepers, and the marshals and cars, etc. As I was coming back towards Warminster, it started raining, and I was riding into the wind. And the car with the timekeeper drew up by the side of me and pulled the window down and said, Are you going to pack it in, John? And they said, you made no reply, he said, but the look on her face was sufficient to know that it wasn't a question worth asking me again. So I rode on, and I actually finished, and I beat the record by a minute.
Gosh. But
it wasn't intended. It was, just one of those things. So I now hold the tandem record, which I broke when I was 19. I think that is 3 hours 18 minutes, and I broke the solo record. I think it's 3 hours and 23 minutes. Nobody's ever beaten it.
That's fantastic.
Off we raced. So again, all good stuff, all personal, best rides. The veterans were a wonderful body of people. I got involved with the West Group. I became their function organizer and ran. I don't know if you know the Venger Binge. It's a big do, 130 or 40 to dinner, big 25-mile time trial, but mainly it's the socialness and of course the prize giving for the previous year.
Yes.
So I got to running that, which brought me into touch with lots of people, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I got into my sort of middle-ish 40s. I began to lose, if you like, the enthusiasm. No disrespect or anything. It was me. I thought, but my son had now started to race. Whether it was a combination of him breathing down my neck or what, I don't know. But anyway, in the process, he'd become quite friendly with the other riders from the Polytechnic Cycling Club. Among them, John Pritchard. So we began to chat, and the Polytechnic isn't a club you ask to join. You you suddenly become aware they'd be quite keen on you joining, without wishing to be elitist about it. So Nick said, I said I'd like to join the Poly. He said, because there were some other young riders, and he did a 54-minute 25-mile. So he was beginning to move a bit, and so one day I said. I met John Pritchard and I said, what about us joining you? He said, great. He said, come along and join us. And that was, if you like, where my final last big fling. And that was great because no disrespect to the local boys, because it sounds awfully as though you're being a bit. But I realised I'd won everything, done everything, and I'd become a little bit stale. I was riding against people who were national champions.
Right, yes.
And that was it. And I went even faster and faster. Looking back, Tony, you only need to read the national press and read about Walsh, is it David Walsh in the Sunday Times, etc. And you realise that the world of drugs is far greater than many of us ever will know or want to know. I look back and I think when I won a race, I knew it was clean.
Yeah.
Of course, you didn't say anything at the time because, if you sort of say, I wonder what, it's because you didn't win.
Yes. Yeah.
So you don't. I remember Judy came up to one race in Gloucester, which was a very good event. And when I'd finished, she said to me, did you win? And I said, yeah. I said, why are you? She said, I won. I said, I told you. I said, why are you asking? She said, well, look at that man over there, she said. And it was a guy from, I won't say his name, from one of the Cheltenham clubs. She said, he's got muscles on his legs, she said. She said, he's got more muscles on his legs than the whole of your body. I made no comment. But, you think, I never actually came in, I say, apart from Tom, I never actually had any personal contact with anybody or anything other than when I used to go down to the gymnasium during the winter to do my silly little bit of weight training after riding back from my work in Bristol, and the guy at the counter one day saying, would sir like something? I said, pardon? And the general explanation was, of course, like steroids. Well,
right.
I said, thank you very, very much. I said, no thank you, and moved on. But that's my only contact with, but it's obviously out there and rife.
Yes.
And it does, I always said that if I thought Wiggins or Cavendish were involved with it, I'd go up and personally kill them myself. I know that Wiggins, and I think it has been rather inflamed with this therapeutic use of exemption, whatever. My feelings is that the error was made not in granting him that right. That the international body granted him that right, and that is pretty. What it should have done is announced that had been granted.
Yes.
That, I think, was the big mistake. Not that it was done, but it was granted, because that would have killed it stone dead.
Yeah.
Finding anything out afterwards was going to cause a problem. This mysterious package that is one way or another, and never been explained. I hope Wiggins, because I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I still have a great respect for him, but I'm afraid it's tarnished.
Yes.
And that's not for me to judge, because, as I say, greater people than me have been involved with it, etc. So off we went. And at this point, when I hit the highlight, I think 3 weeks after I'd won my first national medals in September, Julie went down with cancer.
Oh.
Literally, we were on holiday prior to me riding that event. We were down in Dorset.
Which year was this?
1989.
Right.
And Julie had been complaining of back pain. Usual thing, painkillers, etc. And I remember we were on holiday. We were the last. We'd rented a house on Sandbanks Front, which we did every year with the kids. They weren't children then. They'd gone off, and we were left on our own. And she said, "I can't stand it anymore." She said. She went back to her GP, who was a new lady, and she diagnosed her with lymphoma. And that, of course, meant that she was up, or I was up, and she was down. She was then working in the magistrates' court. She was PA to the clerk to the justices, and been a few years doing it. So she had to stop work because she wasn't allowed to leave the house because of her immune system blown out with the chemotherapy. Right. We just kept going. So I was riding, but with no ambition. It was purely, I think, almost because I just rode to work, etc. But my heart wasn't in it. And I said, so, but we came to an agreement. Julie said she was wondering whether she'd go back to work or not. And I was thinking, am I going to pack this caper of cycling in? So we agreed. I said, you will go, I know this might sound a bit dominating. I said, you will go back to work. I said, even if it's only for one day, and say, that's enough, I don't want to go back. I said, but you're not going to say, I won't go back, and, and always think, should I? And she said, well, you keep on cycling. So I said, all right, okay. I thought that's a fair, I can't press Julie, But anyway, the long and short of it is, Julie went back to work, and I also lost my employment in Bristol. So I was freelancing in the printing world for a while, and her boss, the clerk to the justice, obviously I knew him, and we chatted, and he knew me, and simply said to Julie one day, "Is John? What's he doing?" And she said, "Oh," he said, he's just a chap I could do with in this office." He said, "What do you mean?" Because I was into computers and typesetting and publishing and all that. And he was very much, he was the editor of the thrice yearly journal for the clerks of the justices throughout the whole of the UK. Right. So he said, "Get him to come in and see me." He said, "I think and I was, actually at the time I was offered a job working in Swindon for Yellow Pages at the same time as he said, come in and see him. I thought, with nothing to lose, so I went. Now, the employment would have meant at Swindon, me riding probably so far at least to Swindon, and that would be a problem, or going to work in Bath. So it was decided, give it a go in Bath. The salary was a bit down but on what I was, but I mean, we were comfortable. We didn't need to worry too much about that. So I took off in working for him, and it was good. From that point, a whole new career opened for me. After I'd been in the office working with the boss on this, I put the first computer system into the magistrates' court, and the first one in this whole area was computerised. I dealt with that, or organised it. And one day it was decided by the Lord Chancellor that every office would be run by a manager, not by a court clerk, right? Not the clerk of the justice, barrister or solicitor. They've got legal work to do, not ordering postage stamps and employing people. So I was encouraged to apply for the job. So I did, and other people, obviously with 20, 30 years of experience, applied for it. I had about 20 months. I got the job, which raised a few eyebrows, but of course I had the experience. I was already I was a member of the Institute of Works Managers, and also a member of the, I'll think of it, the national body that took us over. And so Julie was invited into the office to meet the head magistrate and the clerk of the justices, and they said a cup of tea and biscuit. And they said, what was my view of the court, you see? And I said, it was a brand new building, because Julie had helped to organise the building of it. That was her job. So she was upstairs, I was downstairs. And he said, how would you envisage the future for Bath? He said, well, to be honest with you, I said, I'd close you down and run you from Bristol. And I'd just been appointed to manage the office. Well, the long and short of it is that 20 years later, that's exactly more or less what's happening. But anyway, so I became the manager. I managed it. And then shortly afterwards, I was promoted to Chief Administrator by the Lord Chancellor. Not by the Lord Chancellor promoted us. So I then became the Chief Administrator for 3 magistrates' courts in this area. Gosh. Which was good. And I enjoyed, I don't enjoy managing people. Managing people is one of the worst crimes you can ever get involved with. But anyway, I got on with it and involved with all the computerisation of the area and whatnot. And my experience in printing and publishing helped with the organisation of the courts. And then I then had problems with my left arm. I extreme pain. And in fact, when I approached my GP the first time with it, 'cause I'd had it some while, she promptly went and got her hat and coat on and took me straight up to the cardiac unit and dumped me there for 2 weeks. Because she said, you're having a heart attack. So every day when the surgeons came round and stood at the end of my bed and said, how's your chest pains, Mr. Emery? I said, I'm not getting chest pains. So this went on for 2 weeks. And in the end, they found out what it was. That in fact, I had a problem in my neck with in the vertebrae and causing this pain and losing the use of my left arm.
Oh, right.
But they didn't do anything about it. They just sent me home. So anyway, I got involved. So when I finally met the surgeon in Bristol, he said to me, I'm glad I've got you, he said, I can guarantee I'll get rid of the pain. He said, but, he said, you might not get the full use of your arm back. I thought, well, that was a devastating blow. But anyway, I was in my late, 62, 63. So anyway, they operated, yes, pain went, and I did get, and I got pretty good use of my arm. So although I do notice it's limited. But anyway, in the process of it all, I think it was decided that it might be a good time for me to retire from the court service, because I was into my 62, 63. Yeah. So I did, but I was determined I wasn't going to finish on that level. So I took up a low-paid job working for the Department for Work and Pensions for a couple of years, and it was wonderful because I was working with people back where I'd started, sweeping the floors, cleaning the sinks as an apprentice. It was lovely. And people used to say to me, there's a supervisor's job going upstairs, John. And I said, no thanks. I said, I'm absolutely enjoying myself. Also, before this, and probably a big sports change, which is probably the interesting bit, in my 50s, my son was now living on the island, married and etc. And we went down to visit him in Cowes, where he was living, and it was Cowes Week. And we didn't know this. And because we were sat on the shore, and I said to Nick, gosh, this is fantastic. 1,000 boats out there, all ploughing up and down. I said, we've got to do this. So I said, pick a boat, Nick. So he said, those look good. And I said, yeah, 2-man boat, keel boat, looks good. I said, right. I said, should we give it a go? So the long and short of it is, after scouring the country for second-hand boats, which were all rubbish, we went to the boat show, and there it was, one of our lovely boats, brand new, with the national champion who built them. So I said to him, could you build us one like this? He said, do you want one? I said, yeah. He said, so he ran off to get his partner and he said, this is our first sail, he said, we've sold a boat. So anyway, we bought this boat, which was lovely, which I'll show you, there's pictures on the wall out in the hallway. And we did great. We sailed Cowes Week about 5 or 6 times. We came second overall twice with Nick and me. Third once. This is in our class, about 40-odd boats. The year that I packed it in and said to Nick, you can have the boat, he went on and won it. So we always maintained that the crew was lousy. So, yeah, we had a good go. We won South Coast Championships, etc., and it was good. I look back now and I realise, because you start to detect that I was now well into my 50s and things weren't working right. I couldn't move so quickly in the boat. And when you're racing in a keelboat, you move. I remember Nick shouting at me now, "You're not getting that spinnaker up quick enough down at Portsmouth." And I turned and said, "If you shout at me once more," I said, "I'll throw you overboard." But anyway, I realise now that it was probably the beginning of my Parkinson's.
Right.
I couldn't move quickly. Most of your movements are you don't realise you just do it. You walk, you stand, you move, you jump, you run. And I realise now that was probably it. So gradually, until it got to the point where I was finding that I was having difficulty walking. Just the function of putting one leg in front of the other without appearing as though I was drunk. So I went to my GP and I said to Susan Cooper, I said, "Dr. Cooper," I said, "now look," I said, "I'm finding that," I said, "people think I've been drinking." I said, "And I can assure you I've not been drinking." So she didn't make too many observations about it. I think she may have twigged a little bit, but I said, "What I'm finding," I said, "You know me," I said, "because you know me from my sporting days." I said, I'm not a whiner or somebody who packs it in." I said, "And I've been actually going out in the evenings now," I said, "doing a route march to improve my walking." I said, "half an hour," I said, "and I'm getting back exhausted." I said, "But not physically, mentally."
Yes.
I said, "Because I'm having to concentrate so hard on my walking, I'm exhausted." So anyway, one thing led to another. I went off, and of course I finally ended up with a consultant who turns around and says to me, he said, "You've got Parkinson's," which was a little bit of a blow, because by now, of course, Julie had also contracted her cancer had come back again. 19 years after the first time, which according to the consultants was a miracle in itself. But anyway, she then had to have 18 sessions of chemotherapy. She lost 3.5 inches in height, etc., etc. And you can say, and there's me, who thought I was going to be the one taking over, gradually losing it. So my immediate reaction was, and I said to the consultant at the time, I said, I think I may have even swore. I said, "Crikey," I said, "I didn't drink, I don't smoke." I said, "And I wish I had," I said, "but I didn't even go out with other women." I said, "Maybe I should have." I said, "There's people out there," I said, "eating, drugging." I said, "I'm the fittest bloke on the planet." And he said, I know what you're going to say. But that was it. So, but fortunately, my medication I know it works. I know I benefit from it because it manages the worst of my symptoms. My speech is a problem at times. I can, when I'm on the telephone or in a circumstance where I'm not perhaps in charge of the conversation, that sort of nonsense. You probably noticed that when I came to speak at Bradford-on-Avon last year, I didn't have a problem because I was speaking from here. I wasn't. If I'd had to read notes, I probably would have been all over the place. It's the old story. You sang best on something you know something about. So in the process of all this, of course, we've missed out probably the most important bit of all of the Moulton era.